All right, we are so excited. Thank you for sitting down with us. It's just remarkable to be able to look back at all you have done. I want to start with, you came to Flint from Missouri when you were young.
Yes, I came here when I was 18 years old. Took a job at General Motors, was here several months, then went into the military for 4 years, came back, took a job back again at General Motors for several months, then started attending college on a GI Bill. Went through U of M Flint, later on got a master's degree at Ann Arbor, and my university was kind enough to give me an honorary Doctor of Law degree as well.
And was education important to you growing up?
Very, because I came from a family where my sister and I were the first ones to graduate from high school. But my mother was very big on education. She was my motivation all the way through my colleges, because she knew, she said, education is so important. There was an old saying back then, they can't take your education away from you.
Very true. And then how did you transition into a teaching career in Davison?
Well, after I graduated from college, I had a degree in secondary education. So I started teaching there, and within a year or so, I ran for the city council there and was elected. Became mayor pro tem, and then served on the county board of supervisors before I ran for the legislature.
And talking about that, I believe you studied education and political science.
Yes.
Were local and state politics always part of your plan?
No, really, I was always interested in politics. And the opportunity came for me to run for the city council in Davison. One of the council members had some health problems, and he came to me, he said, you bring your students down to the city council meeting. Why don't you run? I said, I've only lived here a year and a half. He says, I'll help get the signatures for you. So that started me out. And of course, with my background in government, that became very interesting to me, and it led to running for the legislature then.
And tell us about your many years in Lansing.
They were very interesting. I spent, as I said, 2 terms as the chief of staff to Speaker Bill Ryan. And then I was elected by my caucus to become the majority floor leader, and then elected for 4 consecutive terms as speaker. Most interesting time of my life, because you don't realize how many things you touch on. When you get up in the morning until you go to bed at night, and even when you're sleeping, government affects your life. Many people don't understand that. The legislation that we passed, I often thought, do people realize how much legislation affects their life? Because most people pay very little attention to politics. The statistic that I despise, 85 to 90% of the people born in this country could not pass the test to become a citizen. Born in this country. They do not take the time or the effort to understand how their government functions. As a result, anybody can say anything. They don't know the difference between facts and fiction. And so it was very interesting to me, because every day I wondered, how am I going to affect, how are we going to affect people's lives today in the legislation that we pass? And yet, people don't seem to understand. Most people couldn't tell you who their state representative is, even, much less how they vote on issues.
What issues do you think you were most passionate about while you were serving in the legislature?
Education.
Education.
Because education is so underfunded. Teachers are so underpaid. How important are teachers? They affect everybody's lives. I often see a bumper sticker, if you can read this, thank your teacher. I mean, teachers are so important, yet ordinary workers in almost any job can make as much as a teacher. Is it any wonder that people are not going into teaching now? Is it any wonder that we have such a teacher shortage? Yet, and so I spent a lot of time helping develop better programs for funding education, trying to get teachers the right to bargain, to help themselves, to affect not only their salaries, but how they taught and the curriculum and these sort of things. Education is so important. If you're going to be effective or successful in anything in life, education is going to play a major role in that. So education became, to me, the most important thing that I was involved in. My background in education, of course, played a part in that. But way back, my mother telling me how important education was, how important that I be able to get it. She was my motivation.
It's wonderful. And you've seen quite a few changes in Michigan and the rest of the country with education over the many decades.
Somebody said to me, you're getting old. I said, no, I'm getting ancient. I said, I remember when it was something to look up and see a little motor on an airplane in the sky. Everybody said, there's an airplane. I mean, there was hardly any airplanes at that time. No television. Kids and grandkids and people can't understand. What? No TV? I said, I was 11 years old before we had electricity. So yes, I've seen a lot of changes and a lot of things. And I'm not old, I'm ancient. I'm a part of history.
Well, running's a big part of that history. When did you start long distance running?
When did I start running? Mm-hmm. I was a good runner in high school.
Okay.
A good miler and a half miler. I was captain of my high school track team, as a matter of fact. Then I went in the military, did some things. I boxed some, played baseball in the latter 2 years. And when I got out, I was going to school and working a lot. And I put on weight. I put on like 30 or 40 pounds of weight. So then in my 30s, I then started running again and ran my first road race in 1968. And ran in a pair of high-top basketball shoes. There was people didn't know anything about running shoes then. You run in whatever. But I started running then and got involved in Special Olympics, and that led to the race. As a matter of fact, in 1976, I was in my first term as speaker. The superintendent in Kersley High School invited me out to see a Special Olympics race. I didn't know anything about Special Olympics at that time. I saw these people running, getting medals, being hugged, and everything else. When I was growing up, Special Olympic people were like they didn't get out of the house hardly, didn't see anything. So one of my staff members, Lois Craig, who later became the race director, said to me, Bobby, we should do something. I said, yeah. She said, you're a runner. What about a race? I said, okay. So we met in her kitchen, and principally members of my staff and her put the first race together in 1977.
1977. Wow. Now, had there always been a focus on helping children stay healthy through physical activity? You know, I know it was a Special Olympics fundraiser as well.
Yeah, it's always been helping charities. For the first 17 years, Lois was the unpaid race director, and all the money went to Special Olympics. During that time, we raised $2 or $3 million for Special Olympics. One year, about the third year, we gave them a check for $85,000, and that was about 30% of the state funding for Special Olympics at that time. Special Olympics only became big in later years after the Kennedys and people really picked it up. Back then, there was not much funding at all, and not many fundraisers either.
That's so interesting. Yeah, the Shrivers and the
Yeah,
Kennedys,
yeah.
yes.
She came in, as a matter of fact.
Oh,
I
did
have a lot
she?
of pictures with her when she came in the late 70s and early 80s. She came in for races and everything. And
I believe her husband, Sergeant Shriver, was
yes,
also very...
her Sergeant Shriver.
How did it evolve from a race, very successful? How did it evolve from that to a Crim Fitness Foundation?
We had, fortunately, one of the people who was a page in the House of Representatives when I was Speaker was the head of a foundation, the JFK Foundation in California. He came in and looked and said, maybe I should be a part of this. He decided to come here. He was hired by the board at that time to be the CEO of the race and everything. He came to me one day and he said, you know, I think we ought to have more than a race. Jerry Myers was his name. And I said, okay, what do you got in mind? He said, foundation. He said, that covers health for everybody, getting involved in everything in the community. So we started that about 15 years ago or so. It got huge. And I said, well, I'll give the first $1,000. He said, okay. Little did I know that $500,000 or $600,000 later, and I told him, I said, I didn't know you were going to cost me that much. But we got involved. With Jerry, he had ideas all the time. And it became involved in everything in the community, youth, adults, health programs, education programs in the schools. All these things the foundation got involved in.
When you started that focus, children obviously a big part of that. Now today, any child in Flint can play sports at no cost. Parents, families can learn about mindfulness. That just must be overwhelming when you really look at where you've been.
I think back and say, what if I hadn't have gone to that race that I was invited to in 1976? There wouldn't have been a Crim. That was the incubation, that was it. That's what started it. You look back a lot of things in your life. What if I hadn't done this? Look what this led to. It's mind-boggling to think sometimes what decisions you make affect long-term. And this was one of those decisions that, no, I had no expectation that it would evolve into what it has evolved in.
You know, what changes or trends have you seen happen over the years when it comes to teaching children about staying healthy, teaching children about physical exercise?
I like to say that we changed Flint and Genesee County from fat city to fit city. I think it affected adults, youth, and everybody else. I think the health of this community has been affected tremendously by the race and the foundation and what it's done. I think we're a much more healthy community now than we were 47 years ago. And so I think that's the thing that I look at. And if you're more healthy physically, you're more mentally healthy. You can succeed in more things if you're physically and mentally healthy. So I think we've had a tremendous effect on this community by what the race and the foundation has done.
Well, it sounds like you've sort of just rolled with the punches and watched it grow and encouraged it.
Yeah, I thought after year one we might not have a year two, because everybody had a job, and most people were on my staff as speaker, donating their time. So one person had the job of setting up the race time, and guess what? Without my knowledge or anybody's, he set 12 noon in August as the starting time. Fortunately, those 700 or 800 people, we didn't lose anybody. Nobody died, but a lot of people went to the medical tent that day. And we just weren't sure. After that, we met and said, what are we going to do? And Lois said, well, let's go for number 2, and let's make sure we don't start it at noon. And let me just say this. Without Lois Craig, this race would never been a success. She was that important. She died recently at age 95. I hope that the board will see fit to dedicate the race this year to Lois Craig. She was that important, very important in the early success of this race.
You stayed in touch with her all these years.
I did.
Very big loss then, it sounds like.
Yeah.
When you look back at everything that's happened, what surprised you the most over the years?
I guess probably how the people of this community reached out and embraced the race. General Motors left, big. The Buick Open left, big. Stores were closing downtown. The only thing left just about was the Crim. And the community reached out and said, this is ours. And it became a success because of the people in this community, because they reached out and embraced it. That was huge. They've never let go.
You know, one of the greatest things about the Crim race is you go through all sorts of neighborhoods, all sorts. It's a run through history.
Yeah, it really is. And I often think about, as we run by the Aero Stadium there, I remember seeing Ted Williams put on an exhibition show there, hitting home runs over the right field fence. I remember we had a professional baseball team here, a Class A baseball team that played there as well. There's so much history as you look at going through, and you look at the IMA, you look at all these things that are there, and the one thing that people will always remember that's run the race, the Bradley Hills. In my later years of running, they became huge. The year I was like 50, 51, I ran the race in like 6.5 minute miles. And Bradley Hills meant nothing to me then. But later on, they did. They became mountains instead of hills. And today, when I run, about 3 miles, run, walk, I run inclines, and they're like hills now. But yeah, anybody that's run the Crim very often learn more about Flint, the old Chevrolet plants, all the things that used to be. history has not dealt well with Flint. Many blows. And people are very, very resilient here in this community. Very tough people, but with a heart. And that's the reason the Crim has survived, and that's the reason Flint and this community has survived.
You always hear about Detroit grit, they'll say.
Oh yeah.
But Flint is something.
Flint has had as many problems as Detroit or more. And Detroit people may be tough, but I'll put Flint people up against them.
I agree. What are you most proud of when you look back at the race and the foundation? What are you most proud of?
There's so many things. I think the fact that we were able to draw in such good people on staff and on the board, I think that has been a commitment that's been so important. And over the years, we've had so many people help Lois. We began to be an international race when we brought people from like 22 countries and almost all of the states as a result. That's huge. That's big. We became a national race, even an international race, who's placed on the calendar the fourth weekend Saturday in August. So I think that's big.
We talked about, well, the Crim name is such a big name. It's everywhere. What is that like? You know, a statue of you downtown, your name on the office is international attention and is the Crim name.
It's astounding to me. My mother was so proud before she died. Because when I came to Flint in 1950, I had $6 in my pocket and took a job at General Motors. Didn't realize that there was a week waiting period, and I paid $4 for a room, and I was getting a little short on money, and around the corner was a little restaurant, and I went in there one morning for breakfast, and I see all these dishes and everything on tables, and there's a pan there, so I started picking them up. And the guy said, "Boy, thanks." He said, "What can I do for you?" I said, "I'm down to about 20 cents, and I got a week waiting period." So he would give me $1 and a sandwich and a piece of fruit and a bag every day. And so I made it through that week waiting period until I got my first paycheck.
Wow.
So I think, and nobody knew me then, of course, and it's astounding that the name in this community, in this state, has some knowledge that people know me.
Did that restaurant owner or manager, did you ever see him again years later?
Yeah, I saw him. Even after I got my first paycheck, I'd go in and help him sometimes, and he'd still give me my $1 and my bag lunch.
And what has all of this been like for your family?
Well, I have 3 sons. One of them died about a dozen years ago or so. But all my kids, grandkids, everybody has an education, a college education. That's what's huge for me. And my will, there's money left for scholarships for the grandkids and the great-grandkids and everything. And I think that's, to think that where I started from with a family with no education, to where now my family all have educations. And that's extremely important to me as a family.
And that's something that today still, families that might not have been able to earn an education still encourage children, grandchildren.
Education is so expensive today that few people can afford it. And that's what bothers me. Not only they can't afford education, many of them cannot afford good medical care. they can't afford to take their kids to a ball game and this sort of thing. That bothers me a lot, because probably 70% of the people in this country live paycheck to paycheck. So an education is almost not feasible for them at all. And that's the reason that I've set up scholarship funds at the University of Michigan Flint and scholarship funds at Mott Community College as well, to help some of those people who need help and their scholarships.
What message would you have for young children who might see this and want to reach big? I mean, you've done so much with your life.
You know, it's all about setting goals and being motivated to reach those goals. And the best motivation is for somebody to see that somebody cares, that somebody wants to help them. And I think people setting up scholarships to help people is a way to motivate them and help them say, hey, I'm trying, and somebody knows I'm trying, and somebody wants to help me. I think that's huge. All they have to remember is, you know, motivation, drive, keep going. Somebody will help you. That somebody will recognize your effort. I think that's extremely important.
And I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, but you had no idea it would become what it is today.
None whatsoever. I just knew that Lois Craig and I talked, and we knew that Special Olympic people needed help, that something should be done for them. And starting doing something for them ended up doing something for a lot more people.
And you talked about the importance of setting goals and looking ahead. What do you think the future looks like for not only the Festival of Races, but also the Fitness Foundation?
I think the future is good, because the success of any organization depends on people. Not only people in that organization, but people in the community. And this community, I think, is dedicated to the Crim Foundation and race. So I think the success is almost guaranteed because of that commitment and what people see and what people see that has been done. And I think people can visualize not only what's been done, but what can be done as well.
Looking back, you have accomplished so much. I think I told you before we started this interview, you remind the rest of us that we've really not done enough. What do you think your legacy is? Your name will be in Flint forever.
I guess just that I help people. And what we did helped people, because not enough people understand that people need help. And sometimes just a little bit of help makes a big difference in their lives. So I hope that I'll be remembered as somebody who helped people, who was willing to help.
Do you think others could achieve big dreams like you did?
There's a lot of people like me. There's a lot of people. And then many of them get no recognition, not enough recognition. Lois Craig was one of those. She spent the last 48 years dedicated to Special Olympics, fundraising, the races for Special Olympics and everything. People like her don't get the recognition that they deserve. So I look at it, I say, okay, I got some recognition. These are the people that deserve more recognition. I wish that people would look out and see people that are really contributing to their community, really doing something, and recognize that. I think that's important. And I hope that more people will get that recognition.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think we've covered about everything. I just feel very pleased and proud to have been a part of this community and a part of what the Crim Race and Crim Foundation has done. Not what I have done, but what the board members, the members of the staff, and the people in this community, what they have done. That's so important, I think, that people recognize this. So that's about it. See, it's 6 o'clock on Friday evening. The Special Olympics races always occur. And a special shout out to the band from Swartz Creek, who always shows up at those races every year. So a thank you to them. And Lois Craig's name on that race, that should always be there. And more recognition. As I say, I hope that they would decide to dedicate this year's race to Lois Craig, who just passed away at age 95. The unpaid race director for 17 years.
Wow. And when you started, was the Lois Craig, did that come later on? How did that evolve from starting from the race?
You mean her race? Mm-hmm. Well, after she left as the race director, she started, we always had some races for the Special Olympics, but it became bigger, and she put her heart and soul into it at that point. And so it became, then they named the race after Lois. And every Friday at 6 o'clock before the race on Saturday, big races by the Special Olympics, everybody gets a trophy. Everybody. I don't care if you finish first or last, everybody gets a trophy. And if you go visit the homes of some of these Special Olympics, first thing they want to show you is their medals and their trophies that they won in Special Olympics. That's Lois.
What a wonderful friendship you must have had all these years.
Yes. She worked on my staff for many years as well. And Lois was a person who gave to the community. I mean, in every facet. She was the head of the Democratic Women's Group. She was one of the front leaders of open housing here in Flint when they finally got that passed. She was one of the leaders in that as well. She gave so much to the community.
Wow, so much history. You could write many, many books. That's about the cutest race.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. And you know, a kid named Fisher, who graduated from Grand Blanc High School, ran a 4-minute mile in high school. He went to Stanford. Recently, I saw him come in second in a 5,000 meter race, and he set the American record even coming in second. So they interviewed him once, and they said, well, what was the first race you ever run? He said, the Crim Teddy Bear Strut.
Oh, how cute. Wow.
And we've had thousands of kids, of course, run the Teddy Bear Trot. All my kids, grandkids, all run that.
Well, when you even think about all of the people who've made friends, people who've found significant others, started families who would have never met.
Yep.
If it hadn't been.
Yeah, it's become a social thing as well as a fitness thing as well. And at my age, I have so many friends that's passed on that I ran with. You know, we had a club in Lansing that I worked out at. I had a lot of guys in their 80s. They're all gone. There was 6 or 7 of us. COVID got 3 or 4 of them, of course. And of course, I got COVID, and I didn't think I was going to make it either. I had long COVID and had problems, remembering and things like that. And recently, I've recovered tremendously, not only cognitively, but physically as well. I've improved. It's amazing in the last 6 months how much I've improved, both cognitively and physically.
What do you attribute that to?
I work out every day. Every day. I have a bicycle. I do stretches. I do light weights. I do bands. I do sit-ups. I have about a 45-minute workout I do every day. A couple of times a week I'll do about a 3-mile run walk as well. And the body needs that. And I think because I work out like that, my health improved, my mental ability improved. The body likes regiment. It does not like surprises. So I work out every day. I keep that workout pretty consistent. This morning, I cut my workout short, but I did some workout anyway. And I think maybe once every couple of months, I'll take a day off, but not very often.
And you said the last Crim race you ran was which year?
21.
Wow, that's a lot of years. Wow.
Yeah. I got to where I was running a lot all over the country. And I like the half marathon. And I run a whole bunch of those, many of them. I won my age group in almost every one of them. And the Gasparilla, which is a big race in Tampa, I won that many times and even held the record for 1 year or 2 years in my age group down there. And the year I was 78 years old, I ran it in about 2:08, which is under 10-minute miles.
Wow.
I still have the nice medal that I received for that. But I ran all over Florida. I ran them. And I used to go up to Traverse City and run that half marathon every year. And up until about 5 years ago.
But the point is, you're still every day getting
Yeah,
physical.
so I think that's important. If you don't work out every day, it's easy to keep skipping. But if it becomes an everyday thing, that's it. I'm going to get up and do this every day. And the body begins to expect it. I mean, it's prepared for it. And I think if I missed like 2 days in a row, my body would begin to say, hey, well, what's wrong here? What's happening? And so I work out every day. And I think that's contributed tremendously to my recovery physically and cognitively as well.
How have you not written 10 books by now? I mean, there's
Everybody
so
said,
much history.
I hesitate where to start and what to put in it. I mean, I'm a laggard in that, and I don't like to write. I really don't. I'm not a bad writer. It's just that I don't like it. It's really time consuming, and really, you really must focus, really a lot. And one of my things that I do the market every day, 2 or 3 hours at least. My first investment in the market was 1968. The Dow was under 600. Now it's 38,000. I hate to brag, but I've been pretty successful in the market.
That's fantastic. And you did that, you didn't take formal classes, anything like that? This was
Now,
all.
what I did is I read a lot, and at some point, I decided, hey, I'm giving too much money to brokers, and I'm not learning enough. So I gave myself $1 million of fake money and started investing and started researching. And you don't just beat the market, you become knowledgeable about the market, and you are able to navigate the market. And I've been able to do that, especially over the last 10 or 15 years. And I spend, you can ask Marcia, I spend 2, 3, 4 hours some days. And at night, they have telephone calls where the analyst of certain stocks and divisions will ask questions of the people who are CEOs and people in mind. And you can call those up on your phone and read them. That telephone, that iPhone, now I can do so much research on it. I look back 20, 25 years, it would take a half a room of computers to do what I can do on that iPhone today in terms of researching for my stock market.
That's something. It's neat that you embrace technology.
Yeah. And but I love doing, I've always liked figures, I've always been good at math and so, and the doctors will give me, they give you this cognitive test. They give you 3, 4 numbers or something like that. So I said to them, give me 6 numbers. They said, oh, I said, give me 10 numbers. And I was meeting with some of my colleagues recently, people that I'd served in the legislature with, a little younger than me. So I gave them this. I said, give me 10 numbers. They said, give me 5 animals. And we talked a while. I said, okay, you ready? I gave them the numbers backwards first and then forwards, and then I gave them the animals. Marcia was there and saw it. They were like, but I believe that a lot of that comes from the stock market. I got to where, as I recovered, I began to watch the ticker tape, and I'm saying, hey, I've got 405 shares of that. I bought it at this. It began to come back to me. And so I think the market had a lot to do with my recovering cognitively, because I began to feel that, I began to see this, and then I began to remember the numbers, and then I remember telling the doctors, and one of them said, a nurse said, you're spooky, you're really spooky.
Most 15-year-olds couldn't do that.
Well, they said to me, we got people 25, 30 years that can't remember 4 or 5, much less 10 numbers, and we always give them 3 animals, not 4 or 5. And he says, we have people 65 years old that have problems. If we talk 3 or 4 minutes, they get 2 of them, and they have to really concentrate if they're going to get that 3rd one.
All from reading numbers on the stock market, data.
Yep. That's because I watch that ticker tape as I'm watching the market. As I say, I've got 40 or 50 stocks. And I start looking at it and I'm saying, wow, I've got 405 shares. I paid $180 for that. And at this price, what would my profit be? And I started doing that. And finally I said, hey, that's not right. That's not average.
Right, no, not at all.
So, and I began to notice that. And that occurred in 6 months or so when I really began to come back from long COVID. And it all came as a result of me working out physically and the stock market and the figures that I have to go through with every day.
Wow.
And but it just, life is strange,
It is.
and better make the most of it.
Yeah, you never know. Every day's a bonus.
It's strange and it's fragile.
Yes.